welcome to the Veloce Podcast. It's episode 28 and it's Kat and Richard again.
Hello.
So thanks for coming back and listening or watching us, depending whether you're listening to us through a podcast or on the channel, the Veloce driving channel as well. So we've had a busy week, haven't we?
It's been a bit manic. We've done about 1,000 miles, probably more, haven't we?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But that's the way the game is sometimes, going from track to track, coaching, that kind of thing. So yeah, we've done quite a bit. We've mentioned before how we are now working in conjunction with Speedworks, who are Works touring car team. We're running all their simulator side, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we've been just working on the advertisement campaign, because what we want to do, anybody who's heard of iZone, we want to be the northern iZone, I suppose, where we do true individual programs for anybody, from somebody who wants to have a bit of fun on a sim, in a true works team environment, to somebody who's practicing for their racing or whatever it might be. So we've been doing quite a bit of work on that, haven't we?
Been doing a bit of that, yeah.
It's great going on the sim. I mean, I could spend my life on the sim there because it's so realistic and
it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
fills the room.
It does, and it's very immersive, isn't it? So we have a simulator at home that we use for coaching, which is brilliant. But the difference at Speedworks is it's very immersive, so you really, really do feel like you're in the car. So it's brilliant for so many different things, but not just the technical element, psychological element of driving as well, and being put under pressure a little bit too. So yes, we've been working on that a bit, haven't we?
Been doing a bit of that, yeah.
And we've got a lot going on with Veloce. So we've been putting tours together for a while now, but because of COVID, we had to put everything on hold, and we're adjusting those tours for 2022. But we're actually working with another company doing a tour in October, aren't we?
Yeah, called Sweet DNA, and they're a private travel company, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they don't really do. They've done the odd thing with cars, just because some of their clients and one of their investors, I think, is big into his cars.
Yeah.
So we're doing some stuff with Sweet DNA.
Yeah. And where's the tour?
So it's only a short tour, which I think works quite well. Essentially going down through France, staying in some fabulous places, which is kind of Sweet DNA's sort of stock in trade, really, is really high-end luxury hotels.
Yeah.
So there'll be wine tasting and lots of good food and stuff like that. But we've also got a morning exclusive on the club circuit at Magny-Cours.
Yeah, which
so
is
sadly not
exciting.
the full Grand Prix track.
No, but but to be honest, it'll be big enough.
It will.
And the thing is, we want to really incorporate the driving element in these tours. There's a lot of driving tours out there, but go through some of the coaching side and on the track do the coaching, and bring that into it as well, but at the same time make it a fab short holiday and a lot of fun. So we've been working hard on that, and there's a bit of a list here of things we've been doing, because we're also working on a driving academy. Now there's lots of academies out there, in air quotes, and the reason I say that is because there's a lot where they call themselves an academy, but they're not like a football academy where it's complete with each area. So we're getting experts together, aren't we, in each individual element as such, and we're going to create an academy that we can put young drivers through, coming out of cars into cars, and affiliate with some big teams. So some structure there, because a lot of people get lost when it comes to, especially moving into cars, because suddenly there's so many different formulas, isn't there? And it's hard to think, do I do Formula 4? Do I go off and do Ginettas, or whatever it might be? So we bring structure in there, management, media side of things as well. But of course the technical coaching, the physical coaching, emotional coaching. So lots going on there too, which is all very exciting, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's all
so it's
embryonic
really
stages at the moment, isn't it? But it's getting there.
Yeah, and something I've got to announce, I'm going to be one of the judges on Formula Woman. So Formula Woman originated, when did that first come out?
It must be. It's over 10 years ago, isn't it? I remember with Mazda RX-8s.
Well, I
drove the safety car for the first round.
I was an instructor for them, a judge for them, when I was 17 years old, and I'm 34 now, so
somebody else can do the maths on that.
Yeah, so what's that, 17
years ago?
Yeah. So this time it's very different to the W series, so anybody that's heard about that, very, very different, because this isn't really aimed at people with loads of money that have done lots of racing before to qualify. This is really for anybody that is passionate about motorsport, wants to get into it, has perhaps done some track days, or you don't even have to have done that, to be honest, but you really aspire to be a racing driver. So it's a competition. It goes all around the country, and we judge on various different elements. And then the prize is you get to race a GT4 McLaren. So McLaren have got involved in this. So there'll be 2 GT4s, and you'll get to race in the GT Cup. But for the people that don't win, there will still be management programs in place. So it's not just you get dropped and that's that. So really excited to be involved in that. It's a really good time for women in motorsport. And I think times have changed so much that this is a much bigger deal than last time. It's a real global effort, so it'll be really exciting to see. It's all televised as well, so for anybody that doesn't want to get involved but wants to watch it, it'll all be televised. You guys and girls can watch that as well.
So watch this space on that.
Yeah, exactly. So also other things we'll be doing. I can't believe this week it's been a bit crazy.
It's been a bit of a mental week.
So we've been at Millbrook, and actually we've had quite a few inquiries about Millbrook. So we took a lovely gentleman, Tim, there who'd not been before.
Yeah.
And we shared it, didn't we? So I did the track-based stuff, so the hill route and the handling circuit. And you did the dynamic side of things, didn't you?
Yeah, so bits of skidding and there's some great facilities at Millbrook where you can isolate individual bits of technique, isn't there? So we did a bit of that, and then there's the high-speed ball and stuff like that. So you can do so much there and cover a lot of ground in quite a short period of time, can't you? Really?
Absolutely.
Just kind of build a foundation for people to then go on. So Tim wants to go on and do some track days and stuff like that. So hopefully we've built him a bit of a foundation.
And then we go racing as well.
He wants to go racing. So when we go onto a track with him, he's already ahead of the game a little bit with his understanding of why he needs to do things certain ways, I guess.
Yeah. So it's been really great working with Tim. And we like to work with people long term if we can. Obviously it all depends what somebody wants to do, of course, but so with Tim, he's going to be a long term client of ours, hopefully. And yeah, we're going to see if we can take him all the way, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So the big thing then, moving on, is
we've been to Brands Hatch twice.
We've been to Brands Hatch, the Porsche Festival, which is a massive festival.
Yeah, it is. If you like Porsches.
How long has it been going on?
I don't know how long it's been going on for, to be honest.
Oh, okay. I thought you might know that.
No.
You've got random facts. And
I don't know how long it's been going on for. A good while, I think, though. To be fair.
Yeah.
It's organised by Porsche Club GB, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've seen as many right-hand drive Porsches ever.
It was astonishing.
In my entire life.
Everywhere you looked. I don't think I saw any other type of car. There was a Lamborghini in the paddock, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's true. But everything, I mean, so there was a lot of car clubs there, Porsche car clubs around the country there. Porsche GB were there themselves promoting stuff. There was actually the Porsche Experience Centre doing hill routes on the Grand Prix side of the circuit, which wasn't live, so they were doing passenger rides, which we've been involved in many times before, but obviously couldn't be because we were coaching instead. But it was just a brilliant weekend, super hot. I mean, to be honest, as a spectator, it's in Kent, so obviously it depends where you're located, but it's one of the best places to go watch because you can see the whole track.
Yeah, you can sit on the grandstand at paddock, can't you? Sort of the first corner and see the whole track pretty much. There's about 50 foot that you can't see. Yeah,
but the rest of it you can get on the inside, outside, and actually there's a tunnel you go through, and that tunnel was filmed in Rush.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah. When he was chatting, when Nicky Lauda was chatting to Claire Regazzoni.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be at Paul Ricard, but it's not. It was the,
so
the pedestrian tunnel at Brands.
Well, a lot of filming was done at Brands. It was also done at Cadwell, Snetterton, things like that. So yeah, if anybody knows their circuits, they'll probably notice that if they watch Rush again. So thousands of Porsches. But tell us a little bit about, obviously there were some big names there as well. Some very big cars.
Yeah, I mean the racing was electric, wasn't it? And the racing was brilliant.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, but what Porsche did was they had a 917 Can-Am car, which was a 917 turbo. I think Mario Andretti said it had more power than God. I think it was the car that killed Can-Am in America, because in Can-Am, was a racing series just in North America, Canada and America, Can-Am. And you could do what you liked. There were no restrictions on whatever you could do. And at the time, they were quicker than Formula 1 cars, Can-Am cars were. And McLaren dominated it for a while. And then Penske with Mark Donoghue built his 917 turbo that had 1,200 horsepower.
Yeah.
And of course, he won everything with that. And that was kind of finished. Can-Am, I think, kind of runs. They have Trans Am, don't they, as well over there. But yeah, so this thing was just a monster. And I remember Richard Atwood told me years ago that he drove it up the hill at Goodwood.
Yeah.
And he said to Derek Bell, you know, he was a bit worried about the power. So Derek said, don't let it come on boost. If he even thinks about coming on boost, change up.
Because of wheel spin and
yeah,
things, I
because it was
guess.
just
So
a monster.
That wild.
So a bloke tentatively drove that round.
Yes.
But the best car, I think, that was there for me, 956, 962, they were the Group C Porsches. I love those things. I think that's because when I was growing up, that was the cars that were running at Le Mans.
Yeah.
And probably the most famous of all those cars is the car that still holds the outright lap record around the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
6 minutes 11, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Which was Stefan Beloff in a 956.
Yeah.
So Porsche have beaten that in theory with a 919 Evo, but of course that is a totally different kettle of fish to an aluminium chassis.
Yeah, exactly. Much older
956, there hardly any downforce.
Exactly.
So that was going around with Jochen Mass driving it, who was a factory driver at the time. I think he was Beloff's teammate actually.
Yeah.
That day, was that him or Derek Bell?
Yeah.
And he was James Hunt's teammate in 1976. So the film Rush,
Yeah.
Jochen Mass is also in that.
Yeah,
Well, he's not
so-
obviously, some
so-
bloke with a wig on.
After this podcast, it might be worth watching that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might
Yeah,
notice a few
So there
things.
was, that was something very cool about a 956. The Beloff 956 driven by Jochen Mass going around was pretty cool.
So the festival itself, I mean, the racing was absolutely electric, wasn't
unbelievable,
it?
yeah.
You know,
I mean, as a driver, an utter nightmare.
yeah.
But as a spectator, you didn't know where to look. There was that much going on.
Well, so we were coaching Sarah Thompson again, and in that category you got 3 classes, so class 1, 2 and 3. So it was a little bit manic with 34 cars on the grid, wasn't it? Because you've got quite a difference in speed with class 1 and class 2 compared to class 3. So Sarah had to really adjust because of her lack of experience. I mean, it's only her 4th meeting. She's done very limited track days. Now, that's not really how we want it to be. We normally would do a lot of training on sim, out on track, do a lot of the psychological coaching. But unfortunately for her, she's got 2 jobs and she's training to be an accountant. So squeezing in trying to become a racing driver is hard. So she's having to do things a bit deep end, isn't she?
Yes.
A lot of the time. But to be fair to her, I mean, race 1 it was really, really hard for her, to be honest, emotionally, because she felt like she got beaten up a bit out there. And I did explain to her afterwards that you will, if you let people, you know, just pass and lay dead all the time, people will see you coming and they will go for any move, whether it's on or not, because they'll just assume you jump out the way. So to really explain to her that you don't jeopardise, even with lapping, you don't jeopardise your own situation or, you know, risk your life or anything like that to let people through. You've got 3 corners, 3 blue flags effectively. And it's not like you want to sit in the way, of course, when being lapped, but you've got to make sure that the move is on. Now, the good drivers get through cleanly, no issues at all. It's when it gets further back in the field that it becomes a problem, more in the class 2 towards the back,
People get a bit
doesn't it?
desperate, yeah. Because the problem you've got, of course, if you're, say, you're 3rd in class 2, so that means you're going to get a podium, but 4th in class 2 is right on your case.
Yeah.
If you catch a back marker, you don't want to waste any time.
Exactly.
And of course, they you know,
It's just
they
it's
just
learning.
want to go round you, and they don't, you know.
Yeah, it's learning.
It gets a bit frantic, doesn't it?
Yeah, learning out how to line up a move, that kind of thing, and for Sarah when to move over and when not to. But she really got her elbows out in the second race, didn't she? And started to really understand dealing with so many cars around you and getting close, and there being a bit of rubbing and touching and you know, love kisses on the car, things like that. And it's not to promote people pushing each other off, nothing like that, but you do have to get your elbows out because you don't want to get that reputation that you're too soft. Otherwise, people will walk all over you. That's just the nature of the sport. So probably like most sports, in all honesty. So good lesson for her, but it finished on a real high. She really enjoyed it in the end, and she learnt a lot. So we're really pleased about that. And we're doing a programme now for Snetterton, and also a winter programme which will involve all sorts of stuff, including sponsorship hunting as well, which is always fun and games, isn't it, to say the least. So moving on to road cars then.
Yes, so we don't need to spend a massive amount of time on this. It's just interesting that these two things have happened kind of, but they're in the press at the moment. Which is Lamborghini's final V12.
The Aventador.
The Aventador. No, obviously this is, so what is it I've got written here? A 6.5 litre V12. Normally aspirated. So because with Lamborghini, that's what they're famous for, and their V12s. You know, the Countach and the Miura and all those. All proper, you know, V12s are what Lamborghini are all about. And this is the last one. I mean, it's a bit of a monster. It's only 1,500 kilos, which is a kind of a lot and not a lot all at once for a modern car. And an Aventador's a big car.
Oh, it is a big car. If you ever see an Aventador, I mean, boy, does that thing stand out. Because it's quite long, isn't it? It's a long car.
And that's not much heavier than a Cayman, 1,500 kilos.
Yeah, so they've done well to keep the weight down there. So it's a real
four-wheel
monster
drive as well.
thing. But so unfortunately, it is going to be the final V12. So like a lot of manufacturers, they're being restricted at the moment, aren't they? And having to find other ways round.
Lambo like a special car, don't they?
They do.
It's the special edition. So whether there'll be another one, they've said, no, this is it now.
Maybe, but as it stands, it is what it is. So 770 brake horsepower, naturally aspirated. And it's around £300,000, which you'd expect with a Lambo.
That's right, for a Lambo.
Aventador
Lambo
as well.
Ferrari money, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, kind of sad to see, you know, that it's the last V12. Kind of reading about it made me feel a bit sad. But like I said, and I've said many times, Porsche are investing in a fully synthetic fuel with Formula One. So I've got my fingers crossed that it won't just all go to baby engines and turbos and electric. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but like yesterday, those old cars coming out and how noisy they were.
Oh yeah.
You know, the hairs on the back of my neck were sticking up, and I just, you know, my heart was beating, and I had this massive grin on my face, and that's what I remembered as a kid. And I think that's still such a big part of the sport, certainly for spectators, but also for the drivers as well. You know, that noise, you know, it's such a big part of it, part of the experience, isn't it? So,
and even more fundamental than that is Lotus. They've come out with what is going to be their last petrol engine car. They're going all electric, Lotus.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of clients now that have ordered these. I think they've sold like hotcakes.
Yeah. Well, that's what. So Lotus struggle. They've always struggled because they go, look at this, and everybody goes, yeah, but it's not a Cayman, is it? So this is kind of their last kind of having a go at Caymans, really.
Yeah.
So time will tell as to whether it does.
Emira.
Emira,
but Emira. So last petrol Lotus after 60 years of making the cars as well. So, you know, that's a big deal. But they've sold like hotcakes because they're about 60 grand. You know, so
right smack in the middle of the Caymans.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, it's a lot of money to me. Don't get me wrong, but in the world of performance cars, it's not a lot of money. And all the reviews I've heard is it's immense, absolutely immense to drive. A true driver's car. Apparently they've really nailed it. So certainly we'll be speaking to Lotus so we can get hands on, and we'll do an episode on the channel on that car. Hopefully a bit on road and track as well, just so we get a chance to show the dynamics of it, as well as obviously what it's like just general road driving too, because I imagine this sort of car is probably going to get used on track days as well as sort of driving tours, that kind of thing. But yeah, massively popular. So what have they done? 1,500 cars?
That's their output normally for a year across their entire range.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So they, you know, very, very low numbers. And they're hoping that this is going to at least double that. Because it's replaced everything. So it's replaced the Elise, it's replaced the Exige, and it's replaced the Evora. So they've kind of stuck all their eggs into this one basket while they go down the electric route. And it actually looks like really quite a cool car, doesn't it? You know,
absolutely.
The pictures of it. It's very clean design.
I had a couple of clients saying, should I go for it? And I said, hell yeah, absolutely. You know, for 60 grand, you know, unfortunately I can't afford one, but for that kind of money and it being an end of an era, and Lotus do produce proper drivers' cars. You can't doubt that. That's something that they do. But this one, they've now, in the fact that with the quality of it is that little bit higher, which is why I think they've always struggled a little bit against the Cayman because of the quality element. But I think they've really nailed that bit too. And the fact that be an end of an era, and not everybody's going to keep them to go up in value, but I do believe they will go up in value. And so it really is, you know, a car to talk about and a car to get your hands on if you can, really.
Yes, yeah.
But you can see how the times are changing. You know, we're talking about Lambos, the last V12, you know, then with this Lotus going all electric, times are changing. But like I said, I've got my fingers crossed that this fully synthetic fuel that they're investing a lot of money in will not get rid of electric or anything like that, but just will give us more solutions and more opportunities to have combustion engine cars that are green, but also hybrids and full electrics as well. So depending on the environment you're in, ultimately. So yeah, we'll see on that one, but
Yes,
we'll
yeah.
see. So moving on to driving, then we always like to talk a little bit about driving and give some tips.
And quite often it comes out of what we've been doing that week, of things that we think, you know, we need to talk about this on the pod a little bit.
Because naturally, you know, working with a lot of drivers and a lot of things come up, so it reminds you of sometimes even just some of the basics that and fundamentals that need to be, you know, go over really.
Yeah.
So we thought initially we'd talk about balance and flow, because in the past we have spoken about vision, steering, timing, weight, movement, and now it's sort of more about bringing it all together and getting ahead of the car, isn't it?
Yes, and it's one of the things, so working with Sarah, Sarah's getting better and better on track, but there's still, as there would be with anybody, certain points where the flow goes away. And a good example of that was coming into, anybody that knows Brands Hatch, Paddock, which is quite a daunting corner.
Which is turn one, basically.
Turn one. Because it's like falling off the end of the world. You can't see where the road goes. It's a massive drop downhill. So of course the temptation is to stop the car, where what you're trying to do there is to brake, but not to slow the car too much, to try and preserve that kind of flow through the corner. And that takes quite a lot of practice. And all the things that we talk about, you know, getting where you're looking, how you're steering, how you're managing the weight and everything else, all is a real snapshot of that going on there, isn't there?
Absolutely, because we're talking about all these things, and now it's very much about bringing it together and getting ahead of the car. So it's again that timing, making sure everything works at exactly the right rate at the right time.
Yes.
And that's incredibly hard to do. It's like working with Tim. He's got so much knowledge. He's read so many books. So he understands a lot of the technical element, but then actually doing it, just like any sport, is another thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And the great thing we're talking about balance and flow, that can work on road or track.
Yes.
So I know we gave an example of Paddock Hill Bend, but actually on the road, I don't know if any of you have sat with drivers where everything's a bit jerky. You know, there's not much sort of rhythm to what's going on. Well, ideally, you want it to feel silky, smooth, flowing, whatever pace you're at. Every gear change be nice and smooth. I understand a lot of people are in autos now, but even the way you brake, how you come off the brake, your vision, your steering inputs, everything to be as smooth and flowing as possible. So for anybody who hasn't obviously listened to the previous podcast, I'd suggest go back and listen to some of those. Also, you can go on the Veloce Driving channel. We've done some little snippet, we called them driving gems, didn't we?
Gems, yeah.
In lockdown.
That seems like a long time ago now.
It does. Where we went through some of these things, so the fundamentals and backbone of driving. So also you can go on there and have a little look and then try and just bring it together. Once you're starting to get the techniques in place and it's starting to become a little bit more subconscious, then start to try and work on that flow and rhythm ultimately.
Yeah, and it should slow things down in your mind, and it creates time for you. So like on the road, you know, you're getting ahead of the car, but you're also getting ahead of the environment. So things aren't catching you out. You've more time to deal with hazards and problems and setting yourself up. And things like motorway driving, you know, where you time your lane changes so you don't get boxed in and things like that, you know, is all part of developing this balance and flow.
Yeah.
So yes, it's talked about a lot on track, but you can use it a lot on the road as well. You know, we try and help people to understand that and to develop that, don't we?
Absolutely. So like with track, it wants to feel like effortless speed. I often tell people like it should feel therapeutic, which sounds bizarre,
that's right.
because people think, how on earth could you driving at 10 tenths, can that be therapeutic? But you want to get into that rhythm where it really feels like that. And on the road, it's about making good progress and timing your movements, let's say on the motorway, being ahead of the car all the time and making sure that you don't get, as you said, boxed in, that kind of thing, and really flow with everything that you do, whether it's a motorway, a country road, whatever it is. So like I say, you can go back. We're going to do a lot more stuff with the channel anyway, but you can go back, look at those, or listen to the previous podcast. And hopefully that just helps you think about bringing these things together a little bit more, really. So moving on to motorsport, obviously one of our favourite subjects.
Yeah.
So, well, there wasn't a huge amount on. There was obviously the F1, which was a massive event, and FIA 3. But away from that, there wasn't too much else going on, was there, really?
Week, for everything else.
So F1 Dutch Grand Prix, so first one since 1985. So
well, it's Nelson Piquet one, I think I read somewhere.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So obviously brilliant for Max Verstappen. I've never really seen so much support for one driver, I don't think. They follow track to track,
perhaps.
But you know, track to track as well. You
know,
there's
an orange army everywhere they go.
Absolutely, I think it's so cool. And I was very, very impressed with how he dealt with that pressure, because he's still a young guy. I know he's getting more experience, but it's the first time he's really had to fight for a title in Formula One where he's had a car quick enough. So he's got that side, and then going to the Dutch Grand Prix after so many years of it not existing on the calendar, and then having all that pressure on your shoulders to perform.
Because he's the reason there's a Dutch Grand Prix.
Yeah. And I thought he just did absolutely sensational. Just such a mature drive, to be honest, from start to end, from, qualifying.
Because he didn't have a big gap, he didn't have a massive lead through the race, did he?
He was pushed the whole way, really.
Yeah, and he just soaked it up, really.
Absolutely. And Zandvoort itself is an immensely technical track, so it's a lot more.
It's a hell of a bit of road, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's a lot more old school, isn't it? So it's
more like an IndyCar track.
It's very up and down, camber changes. There isn't really much runoff. You've got grass, walls, and you've got gravel.
Yeah.
And it's really fast. Actually, Lewis said at the end of the race it's one of his new favourite tracks.
Did he? Is that what he said? I missed that. Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I think
it's like a roller coaster. If you watch any of the on-boards, it's like there's these fast sweepers over things, but they're absolutely pinned to the boards.
Absolutely.
It's a mega track.
So if you ever get a chance, do a track day on it. I did a race there, and I can only briefly remember some of it, but I remembered it being an incredibly, twisty but fast circuit. It's certainly one to go to and drive on. It's right next to the beach as well, so you could watch from a yacht, or you could, or you could have a nice holiday at the same time. The drivers really loved it, didn't they? So we won't go through all the results and everything, because you guys and girls are going to probably know that anyway. We're going to just talk a bit more about the gossip of things, really, aren't we?
Because to be fair, it wasn't the world's best F1 race, was it?
No, it was
with the track it was, the overtaking wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Unless you're Sergio Perez, who overtook everybody.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And actually, Christian Horner mentioned that Perez did an outstanding job.
He got driver of the day, didn't he?
Yeah, because he was very unlucky in qualifying with his whole backing up, finding space, having to get your tyres at the right temperature, then go. And he didn't get over the line in time. Unfortunately, his time didn't count, hence why he qualified so poorly. So that was a big knock. So to come back from that, and have that gritty determination,
He did well.
and do that, I thought was astonishing. And I'm really glad they've signed him for another year, because I do think you need consistency within a team. Chopping and changing drivers each year doesn't work, and Max is in his element at the moment. He knows the team so well. He's coming young, he's had chance to make mistakes, learn from them and mature as a driver. So a lot of drivers coming in, you know, they have to deal with this huge pressure of Max Verstappen. But I do believe Perez can do that. I know there's still some work to do, but he's amazing in races, and I think that's what counts. A bit like Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso is not the best qualifier because he'll get the car set up for the race, and not quite often then outdoes Ocon in the races.
Yes.
Because that's how he makes it work.
Well, it was funny because there was Ocon kept going off the radio and saying that Fernando's going too slowly because he was behind him.
Yeah.
So then they go to Fernando and said, Ocon said, "You're going too slow," and he says, "Well, of course I'm going slow because I'm trying to preserve my tyres and go faster if you want." But, and of course, by the end of the stint, he then pulled away from Ocon because he was managing his tyres.
Exactly.
That's the experience of the the old fox.
Absolutely. And as anybody who listens or watches this will know, I'm a massive Alonso fan, and I think in the paddock there aren't many people that aren't. I know Lando Norris said he looked up to Alonso a lot. And the fact what he did off the track just as well as on the track, you know, and I think there's a huge amount of respect there for him, and vice versa as well. Yes. So
and the other funny thing that happened in the race was Valtteri Bottas, wasn't it? When he stuck his two fingers up because they pitted him and he didn't know why they were pitting him, but he's about changing his tyres because there was vibration, and he said, "Why have you pitted me?" Just said it like that. Yeah. And he said, "Well, vibration." So then he goes for a fastest lap.
Yeah.
And halfway around his fastest lap, they said, "Abort the fastest lap, Valtteri," and he kept his foot down.
Yeah, he did. So Lewis had to come back in, new set of tyres, and do it on the last lap. And he just did it.
So that was
but I
kind
of thought, well, you know what, Bottas, I don't blame you because you've been a number 2 for a long time. Okay, you can look at it as he's not performed well enough, but like we know with Sebastian Vettel and who was the Aussie driver, Mark Webber.
Oh yeah.
You know, all came out in the wash, didn't it, of really what it was like at Red Bull at the time in that situation. So we don't know really what's going on behind the scenes with Bottas and being treated like number 2 all the time. Is he getting really the identical car treatment and so on? You know, so yeah, it kind of did make me chuckle a bit, really. But the other big talking point,
well, that leads onto this a bit, doesn't it?
Exactly, sticking point is where's Bottas going to go? Because with that move, what he did there made me think it's been confirmed he's out of a seat next year.
Yeah.
At Mercedes, so I think Russell's definitely got that seat, don't you?
But it's what happens next.
Yeah.
Because essentially, what's happening is, as my reading of it, Russell's going to Mercedes. That's happening.
Yeah.
So and Kimi's retiring. So that leaves a seat at Alfa and a seat at Williams.
Yeah.
Now Williams and Alfa desperately want Alex Albon.
Yeah.
Because he's fast, he's got experience, and he's been at Red Bull, so he knows how a top team works. So those two teams desperately want Albon.
Yeah.
What's happening is Toto is trying to place Valtteri somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's trying to place Nick de Vries, who's Mercedes Formula E champion.
Yeah.
They're trying to place him. But of course, the Williams and Alfa don't want those two.
No.
They want Albon.
Yeah.
So, and Christian Horner got all excited about it because Williams is the best place for me for Albon to go. So I think Williams are on the up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the trouble is, he's a Red Bull contracted driver, and of course Williams have got Mercedes engines. Now for me, that Toto should have no say over that.
Yeah.
Because Williams are not Mercedes.
Yeah.
They buy the engine and they get the engines for free. So of course he wants to stick De Vries in there, is my reading of the situation, really. But Williams
just won the Formula E championship, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, who is an amazing driver, but obviously would be a rookie in Formula 1. Yeah. Whereas Albon, he really never got a shot. You know,
and they all know how good he is. All the teams know how good he is.
Oh well, George Russell said he was one of his biggest competitors, and we know how good George Russell is. I just think it didn't work. He got thrown into that top team too early, and 80% of performance is in your head. And I think, unfortunately, his head dropped, and everything was about Max, and he fell apart, which is what we saw with Gasly as well. And look how amazing Gasly's done since he's been out of that team. So I think, you know, a lot of the other teams know this, and they know how good Alex Albon is, and he deserves a seat in Formula 1. He really does. He didn't get
He went to the DTM race, didn't he? And just annihilated everybody.
Yeah, because he's unbelievable. And you just think it's not it's just not fair, really. So I think he deserves a seat. Nick de Vries, I'd love to see him come in out because also a driver from Formula E into Formula One, it'd be nice to see the transition. What's that like? But at the same time, then where does Valtteri go?
Well, Alfa said they don't want a rookie.
Yeah.
So they either want Albon or they want Bottas.
Well, I think ultimately, like you say, if Albon could go to Williams because they're on the up, and then Valtteri goes the other way, because that he has a lot of experience. He's in a top team. He'll have a lot of knowledge. Because Valtteri's a good driver, and at times he's been able to beat Lewis. Again, I just think it's a mental game, and it's just all a little too late, unfortunately, for him.
Yeah.
But I don't think he should be out of Formula One, not at all. But anyway. So we'll stop talking about Formula One because we could go on forever.
We'll see what happens this week with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our interactive question. So I don't know if you want to read this out.
So what
different this week.
Yeah, so we want to get your thoughts, really. So essentially the world of cars and motor racing is changing a lot, as we all know. And various governments are kind of sending all the automotive industry down the electrification route. So we just wondered what your thoughts are on whether that's here to stay, whether it's the right answer, or what do we think is going to happen next with
that? Is electric the only solution, or this fully synthetic fuel that could be? I do believe will come out. If Porsche and Formula One are investing in that, there's no way that's going to be dropped.
No.
But my opinion is that I don't think electric should go, but I don't think it's the only solution.
No,
I think
part of the answer,
I think electric's great for cities, making the air cleaner. It would be great for taxis, buses, that kind of stuff. I don't think it's so good out of cities because of the infrastructure that needs to be built.
Well, what we've just done with going to Brands, it's a 500-mile round trip. Well, that would have been like 6 or 7 stops,
Yeah, but it also, people need to think about these superchargers, the power that comes out of them. What is it? If you charge a Taycan in 20 minutes, it uses
more power than your house does in a month. 3 months,
3 months, yeah. So we've got to think about the environment in other ways with electric. So, but anyway, that's obviously our opinion, and I'd love, we would, for you to get in touch and give us your opinion on, whether you think, electric's here to stay, whether you believe there will be an alternative, or what the solution could be. So yeah, please get in touch. We always enjoy reading your answers and things. So please get in touch with that. And I think that's really it, isn't it?
That's kind of us done,
So for anybody who hasn't seen it, we did a special episode after Le Mans with Richard Atwood, who won Le Mans in 1970 for Porsche.
Yeah.
Porsche's first ever victory in Le Mans, but also he was a former Formula One driver as well, and he obviously raced with some amazing people, big names of the sport.
Iconic names, yeah.
And has a lot of stories to tell, let's say. So it's a very long podcast /
it's a lovely interview though, isn't it? Because he just chatted, didn't he?
Yeah, so we work with him, so we know him quite well. So we went to his rather grand house and we filmed it there. We'll admit the quality of the video wasn't great, mainly because his house is quite dark, because it's a very grand old house. But it's either worth a listen or watch, whichever way you want to do it. So we decided to do that after Le Mans and get his thoughts on Le Mans in general, and of course his history and where he's come from, really. So we're going to go do some more legend episodes with other older drivers who have come from the past, and talk about obviously the present and the future as well. But we do also have some current very exciting drivers, engineers and things coming up. So they're all gradually getting scheduled in, and then we'll announce them as we go. So thanks for listening, and appreciate for everybody who has been subscribing to the channel as well as the podcast, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks guys.
See you, bye.
Bye.